All right. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our CMDB Health Deep Dive Outreach session. My name is Callan Bond. I'm a program manager here at ServiceNow, and we've got a fantastic session for you today. Lots of great info and content on understanding and improving your CMDB health. We've got a packed agenda, so we're just going to get right into it. Before we start, we do have a safe harbor notice. If you've been on any of these sessions before, you've likely seen this. We don't talk too much about forward-looking stuff today, but if anything comes up that's not already out in product, it's not a guarantee. Don't make any investment or purchasing decisions based off that. I'm going to introduce our speakers. So we've got a couple of the top CMDB gurus at ServiceNow with us today. It's Mark and Amir, and I have the pleasure of getting to work with both these guys pretty often. And you may have worked with them or been involved with them as well, since they're both extremely customer centric. So Mark is a outbound product manager here. He takes all of the great new features and content that come out around the CMDB and help package it up and make sure you, our customers and partners, can understand and make the most of what's coming out. He's also one of the chief architects of CSDM, if you're familiar with that. And Amir is a product success architect. He has worked with hundreds of customers at ServiceNow, helping them with their challenges, and real big focus around CMDB in this area. Great to have both these fellows with us today. I am a program manager and get to work with them and other folks here on a number of initiatives in the CMDB and data foundations area. All right, our agenda, we're going to start with a little bit of an overview around CMDB health. This will be a quicker part of the program. We have covered this in more detail in a previous session that Mark and I did earlier this year. And I'll have a link in chat on where you can find those sessions. The recording of this session as well will get posted there. So that is in our CMDB community forum. And once I'm done with my bit and Mark is talking, I'll post that link in, but that's where you can find previous sessions as well as this one. Hopefully sometime this week, it'll get posted. So we'll talk about, in general, CMDB health, why it's important, the data foundation dashboards. Mark will talk about the 3 pillars of a successful CMDB and some detail on which fields are important to manage on the configuration items in your CMDB. Then the meat of the presentation, we've got Amir talking Amir and Mark talking really on 3 separate areas or topics. Populating groups, so CIs have assignment groups or support groups on them. That's not discoverable. And so you may have thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands of CIs that don't have that information. It's important to have populated. How can you do that without doing it manually? So we'll get into that. We'll talk about locations. So you might have CIs and have groups populated on them, but you need to know where those CIs are located as well. Same thing, a big problem can be having duplicate locations. So we've got some really great insight into understanding and remediating duplicate locations on CIs. And then finally, you can have the best CIs in the world, but you want to have those tied to your incidents and incident management. That's really how you get a lot of the benefit of having this information in. And so we'll talk about that. All right, so we're going to start with CMDB health and actually flip this around. So when we're talking about health internally at ServiceNow, we often talk about a number of metrics which are indicative of the health of a CMDB. And how you can see how your CMDB is doing with those metrics is through the CSDM and CMDB data foundation dashboards. So those dashboards are free. They're in the ServiceNow store. You just go to store.servicenow.com, search for data foundation dashboards. You'll find them, get those installed. And there's 2 dashboards. There's CMDB and CSDM. The CMDB one, we've got a screenshot here. It's got 4 tabs on it. And they have a number of metrics that all the metrics give you a result. There's a result column. It's between 0 and 100. 0 is bad, 100 is good. They all have a priority on them. And so some metrics, you may have some that both have a 0%, but one is critical and one is maybe medium to prioritize getting it better. And that's because not all metrics are equal. Some are a little bit more important than others. We have a sort of a hidden weighting there. And then importantly, on the right, there's a remediation playbook URL. So that's a KB article that gives all kinds of great info about the metric, why it's important, what it will impact if it's not at 100%, and how to fix it. So there's a YouTube video that we did, Mark and I did, that talks about the data foundation dashboards and the CMDB health dashboard, which is out of box. That one is built-in products, not a store download. You may be familiar with the health dashboard as well. That's completeness, compliance, and correctness, the 3 C's on that one. So we go into sort of what's different between those two. But when we are sort of internally talking about a healthy CMDB, we're talking about the sort of aggregated score of the metrics that show up in these data foundation dashboards. And so you might think, okay, well, there's a bunch of metrics. It's not, push a button and everything gets to 100%. There's some effort in getting these scores healthy and maintaining them. What does that give you? Why would you do that? Well, because we can analyze healthy and not healthy CMDBs internally here, we looked at the metrics of thousands of instances. And then we also know in those instances, how long are customers taking to resolve high priority incidents? And we can see that there's a correlation that if you have a healthy CMDB, those instances resolve high priority incidents on average 27% faster than an unhealthy CMDB. They have fewer high priority incidents. They fulfill requests faster. Here's some other nice sample of things that you get with a healthy CMDB. So your change management tends to go better. You have vulnerabilities get closed out faster. You're more efficient in resolving incidents by using problem management. So all kinds of better business value by having a healthy CMDB. All right, and I'm going to pass it over to Mark here to talk about 3 pillars for successful data foundation.
Thanks, Callan. So one of the things that we notice a lot of customers, they need to focus on kind of 3 key areas to be successful in implementing our CMDB and CSDM data foundation here at ServiceNow. The first pillar is ingesting information where you need to tap into existing details about your infrastructure and other manual derived data sources. And you need to connect those manual derived information, such as business applications or capabilities, to the discoverable information that's out there that you get from either purchasing and using ITOM visibility or service graph connectors. You need to also understand the ownership of that data, because most CMDB folks don't own the actual data. They need to know who does own that information, and we'll be covering some of that in the later video. The middle pillar is all about governance of that data. The data needs to be healthy, and you need to improve the health of that data over time. This is a governance activity which the team needs to be able to tee up with the stakeholders that are out there. So this is a key element that we'll be covering more intently in the next 6 months or so. You'll see a lot more sessions on governance here. And the last key pillar, I like to highlight the data that we have and we store. We want to use it. We get value out of it by using it in our processes and the products that we sell. We needed to use it in reporting and calculating metrics. So we'll be looking at some of those use cases as well, especially incident management, where most of our customers are using ServiceNow today. Next slide. And one of the things that I noticed, there's a lot of folks that are in audit kind of regulated industries where you get audited by an external body. And this is just an example for the financial services industry here in the United States. FFIEC is the regulation body that basically audits banks and financial services. And this particular slide has a snapshot of the auditable fields that they will ask you about. And so we just want to highlight out of all of these things, right? There are a lot of things that we can cover here, but we're going to cover in more detail the physical location hierarchy that we have, which is used and needs to be improved and usually fixed and managed on the CMDB. And the other thing we're going to cover is the ownership information. Who are the owners of that information? So when you do want to go and have questions about that and make sure that we're dealing with those issues that we do find for health, for example, who do we contact? And that's an important part of the process and some of the features we're going to talk about here in a minute. And if you are familiar with CSDM, I just wanted to highlight on CSDM the key areas here on the model that we're going to address today. And mostly this is, if you're familiar with crawl, walk, run, fly, the things we're going to be tackling today are in the walk level of adoption. And we're going to tackle the CMDB dynamic CI groups, how that connects down into the infrastructure, and how that infrastructure is related to the location hierarchy. We're also going to look at how we set that ownership information to every CI using this path, using that dynamic CI group. And so this is a really nice new feature we added, I think, in the San Diego release. And a lot of folks aren't really taking advantage of it to automate some of this ownership information. So this will be a session to kind of get into how that works and how to set that up and use that. And there's a lot of features and products that we now requires the CMDB data. This is just a short list of those products and features. On the left-hand side, you're seeing a list of features. CMDB Data Manager, that's for dealing with end-of-life policies of the data. We find that a lot of folks were implementing that with their own scripts. Now there's a place to go. You implement those policies essentially. The Dynamic CI group, we'll get into that in more detail in a minute. The business applications per incident. If you have the CSDM data all structured properly, you can actually see a list of all the business applications that may be impacted, so you can contact application owners or architects if you need to get them involved. And then CSDM and change, we're leveraging CSDM and dynamic CI groups that we introduced in San Diego in change management processes. And then data synchronization, we're going to cover in a bit more detail. An app services wizard is really a key thing that you can set up your app services more in an established way, in a process. You can approve them and then make them real and live. The products that use CSDM on the right are things like site reliability operations. This is where we allow folks that own and manage their own operational footprint to do that. That's in the store. Service Builder is something that creates the service and the offering and connects it to things like the application services and catalog items. If you're not using that, that's a great tool. It's in the store. Digital portfolio management is a way we're bringing the business apps and the service together and all the metrics that we collect, including some of the key metrics we're going to talk about here to fix those. And the last thing to mention is DevOps config manages the SDLC component. This is something we added in CSDM version 4, and a lot of the products are still being baked to be able to leverage that in the future.
All right, so we've got first one we're going to talk about is populating groups. So we mentioned having that assignment and support groups populated on CIs is important. And how do we do that? We do that using dynamic CIs. And so, Mark, I think you're going to talk about group synchronization.
Yes. And so this was added, like I said, in the San Diego release as a part of the process of assigning groups at that high level, technology service level. And if you're using Service Builder, you also define the offering, which you tier out your services. You may have different groups, you may have different SLAs, OLAs for those, and that's where you differentiate your tiers of service. The next build out here will show you how we use the dynamic CI group. And I like to think about that as a query-based system. You can also manually add things to those dynamic CI groups, but you're scoping a set of CIs that are specific to this SLA, OLA, and the groups that manage those. And then, of course, the specific SLA and the groups will be associated to those particular servers that are scoped. So you may have an IP range that is specific to dev, which is different SLA, OLA than production, as an example. Now, the important thing here is you may not have the ability to let's connect everything here. So one more build there. If it's not connected to the dynamic CI groups, there may not be a group applied. And so this is something we want to be able to scope, make sure that your CIs have those groups assigned and they're part of dynamic CI groups going forward. So this is a very important element of the model. And we use it in automation processes like synchronizing these groups.
Great. Okay, so now Amir is gonna show us here, and we pre-recorded this just because with the demo instances, sometimes we can have, they can just be a little bit slow. So we wanna make sure that it goes smoothly. this is a great example of how to set up a dynamic group here.
In this video, we will show you how to cascade the managed by group and the support group attributes down to the server CIs from the technical service offering that they belong to. Here I'm looking at the Linux servers table in the CMDB workspace view. Your view may look a bit different. I've changed some of these attributes to ensure that we can see them all at the same time. And here you can notice that the managed by group and the support group attributes are empty. These two non-discoverable attributes have to be entered in manually. We will start with creating a dynamic CI group. We will add all of our Linux servers that are installed and operational to it. First, we will create a CMDB query. We will use this query in our CMDB group. It's called Linux server demo. Make sure the type is a CMDB query. And on the left side, we look for the Linux server table, which has 11 CIs in it. Drag it on the canvas, and let's apply a filter. You want to make sure the operational status is operational and the install status is installed. Click run, and you should be able to see the CIs. Now that the query is set up, you can see the results here as well. Moving on to the next thing, let's create a CMDB group together. Let's give the name Linux server demo group. And we will save the record. Under CMDB group contains saved queries, we will add the query that we just created. You can look it up. There's the Linux server demo group. Select that and click submit. And now I'm going to click show all CIs. And we should be able to see our 11 CIs once the page loads. And there they are. Let's go back to our group. And I'll click the update button just once more, make sure everything's saved. Okay. And now we're going to go to dynamic CI groups. As you can see, I already created something for Windows. In this case, we'll create one for Linux. And I'm going to call this Linux server dynamic CI group. It's not critical. I'm going to make it operational. And then here, the CMDB group, let's select the group that we just created. Click submit. When we land back in our Linux server dynamic CI group, we can reopen it. And we can click view CMDB group CIs. Once the page loads, it should load us the 11 CIs. Next, we're going to go to technical services, and we're going to create a new service and service builder. We are going to create a new technical service. And it's going to be hosting services demo. It's going to be supported by the service task. And notice here I don't have the managed by group attribute. It's a technical service, production, and operational. I'll click submit. And here's our hosting services. Next thing, we're going to technical services offering. Click the new button. And this is a Linux server administration offering. introduction. Parent is going to be the hosting service that we just created. And notice here I have the managed by group attribute because I added to the form. You may have to add this to your own forms. And here, our managed by is going to be the hardware. The support group, service desk. And our criticality is not critical. Click submit. Now let's review our offering. Here, ensure that you're in the workspace service, the service workspace view, and you can see under related items, we can add a relationship with the CIs here. Okay. We are going to say contains parent, classes as dynamic CI group. We can remove these. We're going to run the filter, select it again. Okay, once it's selected, there's a little plus icon right here. I'm going to click on that to create it. And once the relationship is there, we can save and exit. In this case, I'll just click save. Yes, that's what we want to do. And now the relationship's here. Now we can go back. And we can actually see the related items that wasn't there previously. Okay. Now we can click the relationship or dependency view. Once it loads, we'll click the details button and we see the associated CIs. There's 11 of them. You can go back to our record, click update. Going back into offering, you can actually go into configure business rules, and it should be page 2. CSDM sync group attributes. You'll see the business rule that makes this cascades going down. In advanced, we can do the script, and we can see the support group, assignment group, and managed by group will be synced. After some time, depending on the size of your query in your CMDB, go back to the list, click the refresh the list. You should see the managed by and the support group attributes have changed to the desired values. They were inherited from the technical service offering.
Thanks, Amir. We do have a series on location as well. So that was a great video showing how to use dynamic CI groups and to get those key ownership values populated. And as we mentioned off the top, you can have that populated, but you also want to know where the CIs are located. And one problem that can often arise is if you have duplicate locations that can really cause confusion and get wrong, essentially wrong data, or people not knowing which locations they should be using and only getting subsets of data when they query. Because if you have two versions of the same location, some CIs associated to one, some associated to another, you're not going to see the full picture. And Amir does a great job in the subsequent videos we will show here on explaining that and how to fix it.
All right, let's look at the CMDB Data Foundations dashboards. On the Data Management Practices tab, we will see the two definitions that we'll review today: service with location and unique locations. I prefer to start with the unique locations one. Once it's fixed, we can ensure that the servers that need the locations are going to have the good unique value. So let's look at this together. My score is pretty good, 96%, and I'm in green. And notice here the playbook that opens up. It's the knowledge article on our support side. We will review this playbook together in a little bit once we start doing the fix, but that's how you get to it. And if you scroll down a little bit, you can actually see how many counts make up that 4% that I'm missing. It is actually just 4 locations. So let's review them. Keep in mind, this is really simplified for the sake of understanding the process. You can see a flat line here, which means I've been having these 4 duplicates for quite some time. And same thing here. It's always been 4, right? So let's fix that today. Clicking Show Records will show us the actual records that make up this 4. Notice this Denver, Colorado duplicate and this Arizona record duplicate. Let's focus on the Arizona location together. So clicking into it will open up the record new tab. And here you'll see some information about this record, such as how many configuration items are there. So we see 1 CI right here, and we see 2 sub-locations. So I'm gonna click on that. It's gonna open up this one. Now we had 1 CI before, now we have 8. That's together, it's 9. And then let's look at the Tucson location. And we have 4 here. That's a total of 13 CIs for this location. All right, now, please notice the field called full name. I added to my forms. The full name is actually calculated based on a business rule. Your regular users probably should not have that, but your admin should, and it's calculated based on several attributes that are populated, such as the parent and child relationship between the locations. All right, let's look at one of these CIs. All right, once you click the information icon here, you can see information about this location, but once you click the lookup here, actually you can see the hierarchy and where it falls. So you notice that Tucson is in Arizona, which is North America. By the same level, we have the other Arizona record that has Flagstaff in it. So let's confirm that, right? So going back here, let's look at the second Arizona record. All right, so we here have a CI in this record as well as a sub or child location called Flagstaff. And Flagstaff itself has 7 CIs. So 7 plus 1 is 8 plus the previous 13. Now we have 21 CIs. All right. Now that you understand this relationship, let's actually look at a report and see what this looks like to your users. So they'll go to list view or file the report. They'll do something like location is, and start typing Arizona, and they see 2 of these things. Now they don't know which one of these to select. So we'll probably look at the first one, click run, say, oh, there's only 1 CI here. This probably doesn't make sense. So they'll switch it to the other Arizona, right? And also 1 CI. So maybe if your users are kind of getting it, they'll probably say location is Arizona or location is the other Arizona, right? Now they're running a report and saying, yeah, I have 2 CIs, and they think this is it. But in reality, we know they're missing 21 CIs. So let me show you how we can do that. All right. So many of you will say, well, we'll just do different query. Let's just say location, and let's look at location fields. Location fields. Okay, and then parent is Arizona. For the other Arizona, and running this query, it's better. We got 19 CIs, but we're still missing the 2 CIs that are both in Arizona. So if you remember that full name that I showed you earlier, all right, let's actually try to do that. So we'll do location fields. I'll go down to full name. I'm gonna say contains Arizona. And there's the 21 CIs that we mentioned earlier. Now that we have this, we can proceed to the playbook.
From the CMDB Data Foundation's dashboard, let's review this playbook together. Having a result other than 100 indicates we do have duplicate locations. The locations are duplicate by name, so you'll have to review each finding to ensure they are truly duplicates. Frequently, things such as floor 1 or room 308 could be listed, but when viewing it by full name, you'll notice its path is unique in that full name that we reviewed in the previous video. All right, let's look at the playbook. All right. Keep in mind that if your locations are coming from an external source, then you need to remediate the problem in that system and remediate it also in any downstream system from there, as the data has already been sent out to those systems. Fixing it here will only result in the same duplicate being recreated upon the next integration run. So the playbook has a table of contents and the problem statement and how it impacts your business. Review the upstream causes and downstream consequences to better understand this problem. Ask yourself these questions to better understand on how you should proceed with this fix. All right, let's remediate this issue together. In the previous demo, I have showed you how to see this data using the CMDB Data Foundations dashboard. Here, we'll use scripts instead to achieve the same. All right, download and install this fix script. I'm using background scripts here. My screen may look different than yours because I'm using a plugin. It's called SNUtil, and it gets a better experience for developers. Okay, we're gonna run the script together, and you can see it runs very quickly. That is because I'm running a very small CMDB, right? In section 1, you can see the number of duplicates. In my case, I only have 2. We've seen this number on the dashboard, but it actually showed there 4. We'll explain why. Section 2 actually looks for an attribute that may look like a lifecycle flag. Since the common location table out of the box does not have a status, many customers have added it. This is really important to know as it does impact your remediation strategy. And then finally, in section 3, a list of the duplicate locations is displayed. You will see these are the same location that we saw on the dashboard. At the end, there's a count of each occurrence. We have 2 and 2 that equals 4, which is exactly the number we saw on the dashboard. Let's move on to the next play. All right. So here we want to see if the duplicates are being used anywhere in the system. If so, we need to update those records to point back to the location record that we want to keep. And it's the same as previously. Download the usage script and install it and run it. Okay. I have simplified the data sets that these records are in, so it's easier to understand the approach. You will definitely have more data than what I'm going to show here, and you'll have to make decisions based on the full data set for each duplicate. In this case, I have typed the location of Arizona, and here I'm saying there's actually 2 sysids. One of them only has an asset reference. Both of them are in hardware. Those are the 2 CIs that are tied to it. The CMDB CI and the CMDB CI computer classes are just the hierarchy of the CMDB, and of course the children locations that each of those Arizona records have. All right, in this case, I'm going to keep this record only because it does have an ALM asset record already tied to it. And if you remember the hierarchy, it was already placed in North America, so it's less work for me to just actually keep this record. All right, moving on to the next play. Looking at the playbook, the next play is the actual fix. This script will change all the references of the sysid to the location you chose to keep. Import and run the fix script. If you have a recent production clone, it will be advised to run the script in the clone first. Otherwise, run it in your dev, QA, test, etc. before you move to production. All right. The script itself will run at first in a non-update mode. You'll have to change the script when you're ready. The record for rollback options is very, very useful. I always check it when I do any sort of update in the system. So let's run it. And here I kept the 8A record as we mentioned in the previous step. The script tells you exactly what's going to happen. sysid here will be replaced with this. In this table, flag stuff will be reassigned. In this table, this will be reassigned. And by the time we get to these tables, this is already reassigned, so we won't be hitting the big tables. Okay, let's change the dry run variable to false and run it again. This time, we'll actually be making changes. This may take a little longer than previously because we're actually updating records. And you can see that in common location, I updated one, and the CMDB CI computer, I also updated one record. All right, let's look at the records. And there it is, the location flag stuff was updated, which is exactly what we wanted to do. Now you can go back and check this again, and now you should see actually that there's no usage of the 67 record anymore, and it's safe to delete it. It really depends up to you and your organization if you can delete it. If you have the life cycle that was identified in step 1, then you need to change that. If you have a data archival process, you should do that. But really what happened is you deleted a duplicate record which no longer needs to be in system, or you attempted to delete it. You can now proceed to do that, or you can, as I said, follow your process.
In this last video, Amir is going to show us actually removing the duplicates and then validating and seeing the score pop up in the dashboard based on the remediation.
The last step of our playbook is to remove duplicates. I briefly talked about it in the previous session. In our case, we have that empty Arizona record, which I'm okay with deleting. But before we do that, let's quickly look at data governance. To maintain the health of a CMDB, you need to regularly redo the exercise we just did. And the general usage guidelines are that location should be unique, easily identifiable, and make sense to the end users consuming them. They should be hierarchical, come from a single source, standardized, and not empty. Let's go back to our dashboard. We still show 96.15, and we still show 4 duplicate locations. All right. Let's show the records again. And let's look at the Arizona record. Now, if you remember, this is at the root in Americas. It had the Flagstaff as a child. There was a configuration method that got moved. I'm okay to delete this record. Again, follow your organization's practices around record deletion. Okay. Now let's look at some scheduled jobs. You can actually wait till the next morning and your dashboard will update, but if you're impatient as I am, you can run the jobs manually. The first job we're going to run is a CMDB get rel metric collection, which normally runs at midnight. I also recommend changing these scripts to run at a better time because a lot of jobs usually run at midnight. Make sure you change your scope and just click execute now. Due to the size of my CMDB, this is a pretty quick script. And then in my history, I had the CMDB Data Foundation's PM metric collection, which is the second job to run. This one runs an hour after the first job. We assume the first job will finish in 1 hour and it will be followed by this. You can click execute now. And here we can see that it's collecting. It's at 11 inserts. 15. Again, small CMDB, so it's going to be pretty quick. All right, 25 records. If all went well, we should be able to go back to the dashboard. And we can see that the score for unique locations is now at 98%, and that we should have only 2 records that are duplicate. We click on them, click show records, and you'll see Arizona's dropped off the list. I'm going back. You can see the trend here, it was a flat line, and now it dropped. This concludes the remediation of this playbook. Thank you.
And since we're on this list view, I also noticed that the location here is still empty. This location should be coming from a discovery schedules or any other source of data. Here, I will simply update the location value from the list view as discovery source is manual entry, meaning it didn't come from anywhere else, but the user entered and emitted this value. If your discovery source is something else, then you probably should look into a better remediation option than writing the value, because you might lose it during the next run. Here I was told that all of these servers are actually in Phoenix, Arizona. So I'm going to do an update. I'm going to update all of these records together. And now, if you remember from our previous HSD, let's look at our Arizona filters. So if you remember, we tried to do location is Arizona, and we still see only one Arizona because we remediated duplicate. But we want to know actually all of the CIs that are in Arizona, which, if you remember, this is only showing the 2 CIs. So we're going back, and we actually going to look at the location fields, and look for the parent is Arizona. Run the query, and there's the 19 CIs. Okay, well, that's not the number we wanted, because we just found out we had a bunch of servers that we updated to Arizona or to Phoenix. So in this case, let's open up this record and let's see what happened here. All right, simply on the location box, let's just check out the hierarchy. And here we notice that it's actually a Phoenix value, which is at the root, meaning it has no parent. But we really want it to be right here with the 3 values we merged. And to do that, we're going to do it very simple. We're going to look at the record from here. We're going to open the record. And we notice that Phoenix has no parent because it's at the root, right? And we want it to be part of Arizona. We're going to do a quick update. Be back at our CI. Now we can actually look at the hierarchy again. And Phoenix in Arizona. And let's go back into our list view. So now running this query, we have 30 CIs, but we know this is still not the right result for our previous use case. So what we said is we're going to use the location fields, and then we're going to use the full name, and say it contains Arizona, and we'll click run, and we're going to find a total of 32 CIs that are in Arizona. What I'll do here is I'm going to group by location. I will say that the state of Arizona has 2, the city of Flagstaff has 7, Phoenix has 11, Tempe has 8, Tucson has 4, and now we can finally answer the question, how many CIs do we have in Arizona? So now we have added very important non-describable attributes as well as the location to our servers, which should improve our overall score on the health dashboard. We can rerun the health jobs right now and see our new scores. Keep in mind, the data set that I was showing you here is very simplified, but the approach that you will take will be very similar. Break the data down into smaller sets so you can easily identify patterns and resolve them. This concludes the CSDM attribute inheritance and service without a location remediation step in the playbook. Thank you.
We're going to talk about incidents and CIs, and Mark, I think this is back to you.
Yes, thank you. So this is the important part of using this CI data within, and the quality of that data within incident management. We identify that incident management has been around for a long time on our platform, but the introduction of the CMDB and the CIs give it a lot more fidelity. And that's really where operations meets the incident management process and makes it much more precise. So we know exactly what element in from an operational point of view the incident's against. That's an important part. The person resolving those incidents really needs to make sure the correct CI is there to understand that and get the feedback to the teams that own and manage those CIs for those consumers are being informed, and they get the metrics about that. So don't use a generic CI, be very specific. A lot of our customers, one of the problems they have is they'll create a generic PC CI and every incident's about a PC, even though it's not the right one. issued to that individual employee. So just keep in mind that that is an issue that we see, and you do want to be precise about the right CI. Use reference qualifiers, which are categories, subcategories, and then principal classes to scope the CIs that can be chosen within the incident form. These are very powerful features, and they're really, if you're not using them, that's giving you kind of an opportunity to be a little more precise in choosing what CI matters. The principal classes limits the number of classes that are exposed on those incident forms and allows you to target the ones that typically the callers will call in against. The event management path is also very interesting. If you have ITOM Health, event management, this is where we can turn events into incidents, and that's where sort of the caller meets the actual event situation if you've got event management monitoring turned on. And so you can kind of aggregate your incident management process more readily through those two different paths. And then incident management advanced features, there's a ability to turn on a related list of business applications on the incident management form. This is something you do in the incident administrative properties. And if you're following CSDM, if all those connections are there, then the related business apps will show up in that related list, not just the impacted services, but also impacted or related business apps.
Great. Now, I think that second bullet point, we've got a video on this, on making that field mandatory. So I think Amir has recorded this. Let's take a look at this.
In this video, I'll show you how to make the configuration item field mandatory upon incident resolution. The person resolving the incident should know what they've done to ensure the service is restored. Many incidents come in without a configuration item because the user does not know what is wrong. So in this example here, I'm attempting to resolve an incident, and out of the box, the resolution code and resolution notes are mandatory, but the configuration item is not. So the policy that does this, it's called make close info mandatory when resolved or closed. We're going to modify this policy, and we're going to add additional data policy rule. Here we will select the configuration item field, and we're going to say it should be true. Now that we have this new data policy rule, let's test our incident. Refresh the page. We are going to attempt to resolve it. And now you'll see that configuration item is a mandatory field. Once the user selects a CI, they'll be able to resolve the incident. This concludes the playbook step on how to remediate incidents without a CI.
Great. Okay, that's it for the main diagnostic and remediation content. So what can you do next? We talked about the link to the YouTube video. There is that 40-minute health overview. It was a previous one of these sessions. The links that you're just seeing on the screen that you can't click on right now, they will be posted to the community forum. You can also go to YouTube and Google ServiceNow, CMDB. Mark, is there a specific channel that people can do? But there's a ton of content that Mark has posted there.
Yeah, on YouTube, the link for that YouTube channel is right there to the right, the YouTube overview. So, but yeah, so we'll make sure we post that link as well.
Yeah, ServiceNow YouTube, you'll once you find Mark on there, you can just click on his name, and there's a ton of videos he has posted. But yeah, we'll have it in the PDF. Yeah, because the support channel is huge. We have our own playlist called the Data Foundations playlist. So that's how you know you hit the right playlist. It's a subset of them. Yeah. That's the good stuff. CMDB and CSDM training, the fundamentals and foundations courses are up on there. Get the Data Foundations dashboards in, and there's some other links in here that you'll have in the PDF once it's posted. Mark or Amir, any last comments or questions we can address live here before we wrap?
Yeah, I have a couple questions in there that kept coming up, seem to be repeated. One of the questions that came up is, can a CI belong to more than one dynamic CI group and technical service offering? The general answer is no, because we assign that ownership based on that relationship. So if you have multiple groups and technical service offerings that it's related to, the results of the assignment will be undeterministic. Whatever one ran last will be the assigned group, and that's going to not be ideal, obviously, when you're assigning those tickets to the right groups. If you are finding yourself in those situations, post a comment or a question to the community, as usually there's an alternative way to address the problem that you're trying to address here, and that results in multiple assignment groups. So just keep that in mind.
Great. All right. Thank you again, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.